Welcome back to another episode of Pragmatic Optimists. I'm attorney Rachel Cohen, joined by Rhode Island State Senator Tiara Mack. And today we're going to be talking once again, because we've hit this before and we're going to hit it again, Praggies. So make sure that you follow along with Legal AF on the Midas Touch Network, here on YouTube, on Substack, everywhere that you get your news. We are going to talk about how the real threat to LGBTQ rights in the United States is coming through attacks on the trans community. Because this week there was the announcement that Kim Davis's petition for certiorari asking the United States Supreme Court to overturn Obergefell, which granted marriage equality throughout the United States, that cert petition had been denied. And that was covered as this major victory. And that is wrong. And so we need to talk about, we're going to get into some pragmatic realism really quickly, and then bring it back to pragmatic optimism at the end. Because we filmed an episode on this, not to, you know what, I was going to be like, not to say, look at us, we're right all the time. But I fear I am.
Here we are, right again.
And so back in August, when it broke everywhere that Kim Davis had brought a petition for certiorari asking the United States Supreme Court to overturn Obergefell, we got on and said, hey, that's not going to happen in this way at this time, because cert petitions are brought to the Supreme Court all the time. It's not really indicative of anything other than you exhausting your options at the appellate level. And Kim Davis does not have a very good argument for standing to challenge Obergefell. That's a requirement that you be directly impacted by the thing that you're challenging. That's extremely oversimplified, but kind of how it works. Kim Davis isn't a good person for that. She also is not likable. And I do think the Supreme Court cares a little bit still about the cases that they take on and the vehicles that they use, especially when they're going to do something that's broadly unpopular. And so this overturn request she is not serious, people. What is serious is what is already in front of the Supreme Court, a case called Little v. Hecox, which is focused on trans athletes, a group that the Supreme Court views and that honestly pretty much politicians nationally view as the correct vehicle for rolling back LGBTQ rights. Because people do not stand up for trans people. They do not wade into issues of trans women playing sports, which, just for the record, there are fewer than 10 collegiate trans women athletes in this country. No, this is not the issue. The issue is that trans people are being targeted over and over and over again in terms of their very existence. Not that, hate to say it, I don't even think that trans women are particularly good at sports. You'd see a lot more pro trans female athletes if this was a big deal. And I think the stats bear that out. So at the end of the day, this is not the issue, but it is what the Supreme Court uses and what Republican politicians use to restrict LGBTQ rights in this country. Little v. Hecox is up in front of the Supreme Court. It will be argued. It had already been granted certiorari, meaning that the Supreme Court would hear it when all of the coverage was happening about Kim Davis's petition that was never going to get granted. And that asks the Supreme Court to focus on the Equal Protection Clause and what degree of protection trans people, and perhaps I could see them expanding to all LGBTQ people, I actually anticipate that they will, what degree of protection that group of people is entitled to under equal protection analysis. There also was a Supreme Court shadow docket hearing or shadow docket ruling that stayed a lower court's decision in Trump v. Orr about whether or not people could have non-binary gender identification markers on their passports. And the Supreme Court said, the lower court had said, yes, people can have those. This executive order that Trump entered saying that people are not allowed to do that is unconstitutional. The Supreme Court stayed that, handed it back down. So that executive order is back in effect. And so all of that to say, your focus has to be on what the Trump administration is doing to groups that are not considered broadly popular, and whether that is people speaking out for Palestine, whether that is trans athletes, whether that is undocumented migrants with criminal records. What are we allowing for those people in terms of human rights and due process, and what's going to come for us next? Tiara, I know you have a lot of thoughts on that. I'll kick it over to you.
Too many thoughts, Rachel. And I think we said it before on another episode, because again, this episode should just be titled Tiara and Rachel Were Right. The attacks on the LGBT plus community will always be centered on the most marginalized. It is not popular in 2025 to be anti-gay. There are plenty of Republican gay men, Peter Thiel to be one of them, who have grifted to the Republican Party. there are plenty of people who prioritize and continue to prioritize marriage equality with access to rights for every single member of the LGBTQ plus community. And while so many people were activated during the fight for marriage equality, I think that was a great campaign. But what it failed to do was ensure that every single member of that community who showed up would then be met with that same exact ferocity to protect their rights to love and exist in a world in the 21st century where they have full rights no matter what they look like, what sports they want to play. And as an athlete who has played against trans athletes and continues to play at the adult level, rugby, where I still play, against trans athletes, I can say that there are plenty of trans athletes that I have played against that I don't give a fuck. It's rugby. I will, if you have a body and you have the ball, you will get tackled. If I have the ball and you have a body and you tackle me, that is the sport. That is what you do. And I play a high contact collision sport, one of the only offered to women in our country and in any sports arena. And it is a devastating situation where we have used a hyper minoritized community in order to make a case in the United States. Trans people are living rent free in too many people's heads. Like, it's just too many people, less than 1% of the population. And at the same time, I am going to continue to go down this rant because the same exact protection that we are trying to give to people who fit neatly inside of their gender and sexuality boxes assigned at birth are the same exact withholding of body autonomy that we give to intersex people. And so while we are attacking the trans community, we are at the same time attacking and preventing body autonomy for a group of Americans, a group of people throughout the country who are just as abundant as twins in our population, who exist outside of a very neat perceived gender and sexuality binary. And I know the Republican Party loves to talk about science, but this is the most scientifically illiterate group of people and pundits that I have ever met. Like, smarter than a fifth grader really needs to come back and just start polling every single Republican to really figure out if they paid attention in their elementary, middle school, and potentially even high school if they got that far science classes. Because, and while we can continue to berate these people and like mock their intelligence, I think what is the most important thing for us to center all of our viewers on and the lovely people who decide to watch us week after week is that the attacks on trans community members will only be extended to further minoritized communities. If it starts with an X marker for your gender, where does it end for people who are Black and brown? Where does it end for people who are second generation United States citizens? You have a Republican Party that is claiming that people are coming to our country just to have anchor babies, and they are trying to attack American citizenship on those grounds. What does that leave for American citizens born on American soil for their right to have a U.S. passport and not have some gross marker put on it saying they are only a second class United States citizen? What does it say for Black Americans whose parents and grandparents quite literally built this country within generations, where many of those people can still remember the stories of horror, the stories of abuses, and the stories of a country that is still rebuilding and is still built on the legacy of stolen and exploited labor of Black and brown people and the erasure of our indigenous populations? What does it mean if we are going to try to withhold body autonomy and rights and citizenship and the right to say who you are from this group of people? And we cannot be naive enough to say that it's not going to extend to other minoritized and attacked communities in our current day. And so I will always make sure we uplift our intersex community. I will always make sure that any conversation about LGBTQ plus rights does not end at marriage equality, because that only guaranteed marriage rights to some people, and we are still withholding the rights to body autonomy, whether that is gender affirming care for individuals, whether that is the right to not have gender conversion therapy, which is another case that got a lot of attention earlier this year, and a host of other rights. There are so many attacks on the LGBT plus community, and when we only focus on the ability to be seen as the same as our heterosexual counterparts, we fail to protect everyone, and we fail to realize a world where every single person has the ability and should have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, no matter what that is. And that is if you all believe that America was founded on those things, which more and more each day, I am dubious if that is actually the case for many of the folks who claim to be part of the Republican and or the right wing of the Republican Party.
And I mean, at this point, the whole Republican Party is the right wing, right? And I think that that's just a brief aside. But I do want to leave us with a little bit of pragmatic optimism, because when I have been talking about the cases targeting trans people at the Supreme Court, I've been getting a lot of questions of, well, what do we do? What do we do? This is going to have to be an electoral solution, honestly. And it's going to have to come from electing people who are showing up for the trans community, who are establishing protections for the trans and the broader LGBTQ community. And we saw a number of people elected this November who refused to sell out the trans community. And unfortunately, that is not a given within the Democratic Party. But Zohran Mamdani, as well as Abigail Spanberg, I think gave really good answers when it was related to when asked or pushed on issues related to the targeting and scapegoating of trans people. And we're seeing more Democratic politicians realize that that is not only the right thing to do, but also deeply necessary. And I look forward to seeing more people elected who understand that you cannot sell out a small minority and expect that appeasement, Neville Chamberlain style strategy and approach to human rights will work. So we're going to keep talking about all of that over here on Legal AF on the Midas Touch platform. We are Rachel and Tiara, Pragmatic Optimists, but you can subscribe, follow along on Substack, on YouTube, on personal social media, on Instagram and TikTok, and we'll see you soon.
Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.